Welcome to the Sportswagers.ca podcast with Brian Sherwood Steinberg and Matthew Finney.
Welcome to the Sportswagers.ca podcast. I'm the man behind the board, Matthew Finney. Of course, joined by Brian Sherwood Steinberg, the man that started it all over at Sportswagers.ca. Brian, the golf season, we're into the playoffs here now, but man, it was a great first year, full season of coverage, plus 20 units. Taking a little step back this week with college football swinging into full swing, as you know, and of course NFL as well. How you feeling, though? Pretty good year.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the first year of golf. We happen to get lucky and pick a few winners. We seem to have quite a few in contention almost every week, aside from, a few weeks here and there. But we had a bunch of second-place finishes, and I think we had 5 or 6 winners, including a major winner. So I'm really happy. I'm not throwing in the towel by any stretch on golf. Just taking a bit of a break. It's very time-consuming, looking up all the stats and trying to find the course in play that week, how it suits each individual golfer. So it's very time-consuming, and I want to focus on football, familiarize myself with all the teams in college and, of course, NFL. So that's going to be the focus for the next couple of weeks. We may get into golf, but right now it's football season, and everyone's back, to watching football on the weekends and betting it, and that's going to be the focus of this show, Matt.
Like you said, Brian, football fever is definitely out there. I know I was at a fight party this weekend. I got people at work coming up to me. They all want to know if we're going to be all over college football this week, and I said, of course we are. But more important than anything, we're going to go through just top to bottom, the basics, what you need to know to get ready for betting college football, getting ready to bet pro football. There's a lot of mistakes that bettors make, and it's easy to forget, after a nice long off season, what those mistakes are.
Yeah, and, this is what I'm going to go over here is a lot of bad habits that people get into. It's very similar to bad habits that people get into when they play poker. These are the cardinal sins, if you will, of football betting, so we're going to go over it step by step, Matt, and of course I'm going to start with parlays and teasers or exotic wagers. So when you're betting on sports, there's more wagers than simply betting on a team straight up or against the spread. You have exotic bet types like parlays, teasers, buying points, etc., and while the payouts of parlays or getting extra points on teasers may seem appealing, the truth of the matter is they carry a much higher house edge for the book because of how the payout is structured versus the true odds of the bet. So I'm not going to really go into a lot of the numbers, but, we've talked many times in the past about playing into, the house strengths or the house inefficiency. And when you're betting a parlay, a 3-team parlay, a 2-team parlay, you increase the house edge, right? The house edge goes up. If you went to every sports book in America or in the world and said, to the sports book, what would you prefer me to bet, a parlay or a straight-up bet? 100% of them would say a parlay. It's very much like blackjack at the casino. You may beat it one day or 2 days. You have a chance to win. Over time, it's going to get you because the house edge is so big. I'm not saying never bet a parlay. You can bet them for fun. If you're serious, if your goal is to grow your bankroll, only sides, totals, and money line wagers should factor into your strategy. Exotic should be for fun only. You can make a 7 or 18 parlay and take a chance, right? The reality of the situation is the house holds a big edge in parlays and teasers, okay? A 2-team football teaser pays 1-to-1 or even money, but the additional points are not worth the price of admission. In other words, it doesn't factor into the outcome enough to make it worthwhile. Right? Instead of betting a parlay where you're going to get 2.6-to-1, right? Which I'm not suggesting you do, but I'm just, comparing the two. If you're betting a parlay, as opposed to a teaser, you take those two teams. If they cover the teaser, they're usually going to cover the line, and you're giving away about 1.6 to 1 on every teaser bet that you would have won. The amount of times you would have lost doesn't even come close to making up the losses that you are taking on the amount of wins that you would have had you been playing it straight up or on a parlay. So it's just a bad bet. Again, if you're serious about growing your bankroll, stick to sides, totals, and money line wagers. Okay, and if you are going to bet parlays, money line wagers are actually the best parlay you can make. Right? You take a plus 3 points and plus 3 points. That's usually about $1.45, $1.60, something like that, depending on whether the team is at home or on the road. Like a 2-team parlay, a 2-team money line parlay actually pays the true odds. There's no house edge on that, right? So that's actually a really good bet. Money line wagers are great bets. Money line parlay wagers are great bets. Teasers, parlays are exotics. Buying points is an exotic bet. They're really bad bets. Okay, so don't do them. You can do them for fun. Exotics are for fun. Serious bettors, stick to money line wagers or sides or totals. Again, I don't want to get into the numbers, Matt, the percentages and all that stuff, but trust me when I tell you that you are playing into the house strengths, okay? Not the house inefficiencies when you're playing teasers, when you're playing parlays. If you must play a teaser, another bad habit, a really bad habit that people get into when they're playing teaser, because I know I'm not going to bring everyone over to my side, but if you are insistent on playing teaser, the absolute worst teaser that you can make is to cross over from one number to another, right? Like crossover meaning, one team is a 4-point favorite and you take a 6.2 team teaser, they're a 4-point favorite, and now you're making them a 2-point dog. You're crossing over that evenly priced line, right? So instead of a 3-point favorite, now you turn into a 3-point dog, right? That's crossing over. A 2-point favorite, you turn into a 4-point dog. That's crossing over. Never cross over when playing teasers. If you must play them, they're another really bad bet. So in other words, stay on one side. So if the line is 1, you can take it up to 7. If the line is 7, you can take it down to 1, or just stay on the same side. Never cross over when playing teasers. It's the worst thing you can do. Okay, it's just a really low percentage, a low win percentage over time. So just don't do that. Okay, so just to recap that really quickly, if your goal is to grow your bankroll, play sides, totals, and money line wagers. Exotics, parlays, teasers should be for fun only. Okay, so that's number 1. The second thing I want to go over, Matt, is chasing losses, which is another thing so many football bettors do. Okay, so after you lose, do not try to chase losses and win your money back by doubling up or over betting your bankroll. Slow and steady is the way to go. It's easy to bet 2 units after a 1-unit loss and try to win your loss back, and maybe even make a profit. But the only thing that's going to do is accelerate your decline and dig yourself deeper into a hole. Okay, so it's never a good idea to make a knee-jerk bet in reaction to a loss. If you find yourself over betting the midnight Hawaii game as a last-ditch effort to try and save your Saturday, it's probably not going to happen. Stick to a disciplined approach with your bankroll and unit sizes and stick with it all year long, right? The game's not going anywhere. If you lose that Saturday, there's another game tomorrow. It's not going anywhere, okay? When you have a bad day for whatever reason, it tends to carry over, right? If you bet 3 games and you lose all 3 and you have a couple bets going at night, for whatever reason, it seems you always lose those bets, right? So don't try and chase. When you're hot, when you're really warm and you're seeing things clear, there's nothing wrong with pressing, okay? So don't try. That's another cardinal sin that people make. It's chasing losses. Don't chase losses.
I think you see that especially in the NFL as well, those big primetime games, Sunday night, Monday night. Your Sunday afternoon goes bad. You see some major line movement, and those Sunday night games, those primetime games, there's a chance to take advantage there in those games because often there's going to be inflated points.
Yeah, exactly. And you may get lucky. You may be hooked big time on Sunday, and then you bet the Sunday night game, to get out, and you may get lucky. But, in the long run, or more often than not, you won't get lucky, and you'll be in a bigger hole. So it takes discipline. You need an abundance of it to be betting sports for profit. And this is one of the real cardinal sins that people make. Okay? Another area I want to cover is line moves. There's multiple sports books that deal different lines, and it's really important to shop for the best line possible. If you're intent on making money, on increasing your bankroll, having one out is not a good option. You should have 2 or 3 outs. You should be able to shop around. You should have the option to shop around and buy the best line. There's not a lot of games that are won or lost by a half point, but it happens. I mean, I remember a game last year. K-State was getting 12.5 against Stanford. Some places had it 13.5. And depending on where you shopped, this is one example, but there's many of it all year. Depending on where you shop, you would have won or lost because the final score was 26-13, right? So if you took 13.5, you won, but if you took 12.5, you lost. Line shopping pays off, okay? It's not just line shopping either. Watching line moves in general is a good idea. Line moves also tell a story sometimes. There's a lot of websites that provide percentages on what percentage of bets each side is getting. So if one side is getting a fraction of the bets, but the line is moving their way, it means the sharper money or the big money is betting on that side, and the books respect that action more than the public's action on the other side. Okay, so they do tell a story. If you watch line moves, at first you may say, what am I doing? What kind of info is this? It's like anything else. If you watch them long enough, you get a sense. You get a sense of what the line moves are trying to tell you. At first, it may just not mean anything to you, but if you watch them continuously and pay attention, you'll start to see certain things become clearer. It's not going to happen overnight, but you got to start somewhere. An example last season would have been the season opener between App State and Tennessee, right? App State only received like 20 or 23% of the bets, but the line went down from 23 to 20, and App State lost by 7 in overtime and covered easy. So, you got to pay attention to line moves. They do tell a story, and it should be part of your criteria to just watch them. The lines come out on Monday morning, even Sunday night. It's a good idea to write them down, use your snipping tool and take a photo of it so you have it, and do it every day and just watch where the lines go all week, especially on game day, and you'll start to get a sense of certain things, okay? So pay attention to it, okay?
Absolutely, for sure. And one of the things we like to do on Sunday is try to guess those lines. It's a fun exercise to do. Try it yourself. You'll find maybe week by week you start to, like Brian said, you kind of get a feel for it, and you'll see yourself improving week over week. You'll be getting a little closer. You'll be getting a little sharper. You talked about the line movement, Brian. I think this is a great time to bring it up. We talk about it all the time, but Pinnacle, the sharpest book in the world. Like we said, you guess these lines, write these lines down, and check what Pinnacle's doing every single day. See what they're up to, and if they're ahead of the curve on something, you got to take note of it.
Absolutely. And Pinnacle, in many of our podcasts, we've talked extensively about Pinnacle. So you can look it up on our previous podcasts and find the episode in which we talk extensively about Pinnacle and what to look for. There's some books out there that will not even release their line until Pinnacle releases theirs. That's how sharp they are. And speaking of sports books, which is another really important thing, even though this isn't a football betting strategy, but it's a time of year where sports books start advertising big time, So it's the same thing with touts, right? There's slime that exists in the form of online sports books too. A lot of fly-by-night sports books will pop up this time of year advertising attractive bonuses to try and reel in as many people as they can. Then they won't pay, they'll slow play, or they'll flat out steal the money. So, you got to be really careful, right? Online sports books is really an unregulated entity. There's really no legal action that can be taken should you get stiffed or be wronged. So you got to be real careful, okay? Don't get sucked in to these, fly-by-night sports books. Stick with the reputable ones. Everybody knows the reputable ones now, right? It's so easy to look up a review and stick with the reputable one. Don't get sucked into these big bonuses, okay? Because, again, it's an unregulated industry, and you got to be real careful, okay?
Well, you talked earlier about how you got to have more than one place to kind of have a look and get the best number. We talked a few shows ago about different sports books, what their best qualities were. Sports Interaction, if you like playing point spread dogs, they're an outfit we talked about earlier that, they're often going to have maybe a point, maybe two, depending on the situation. You might get a deal there, but we said, Penny as well. If they're, the line opens at 2.5, and on Tuesday, Penny's at 3, and it stays 2.5
if everyone
day or
else is
two.
still at 2.5,
A little slow.
Penny is at 3.
Exactly.
That tells a story.
Yeah, so go back and listen to that show, obviously. Brian broke it down great, all the differences between the sports books, 365, they're great live options. There's just so many different ways to play, and I know a big focus for us this year, as always, is going to be live betting. So much opportunity, and like Bet365 is the best option for that. It's very clean, cash out options, all that kind of thing. Go back, have a listen to that show, Brian, but you got to have options out there, especially if you want to be a profitable bettor on Sundays and Saturdays too. In these major games, these lines are so sharp, it's hard just to set it, forget it, make a bet, and walk away from it. You've got to pay attention to what's going on.
Yes, and Sports Interaction, they're a good book. I mean, a lot of people call it the square book, which is fine. I don't care about that. If you are a dog bettor, they're a good out. You're always going to get a half a point or a point more on the underdog at SIA. So they're really, for me, they're a great option. Because of that, they cater to the favorite players. Well, I shouldn't say they cater to them. They have a lot of so-called square players, that are betting favorites, and they have the data to back that up. So they're inflating the number on the favorite because they know the type of action they're getting. So you can take advantage of that, and that's what I mean when I talk about playing into house inefficiencies. That's a house inefficiency at Sports Interaction. So take advantage of it, right? So if you're going to bet a favorite, you don't want to bet it at Sports Interaction because it shouldn't, it shouldn't be your only book, because if you're betting a favorite, you don't want to bet it at SIA because you're going to pay an extra half point or point. But, if you play as many dogs as you do favorites or more dogs, SIA is a great out, okay? Another bad habit or bad strategy that people use is referring to trends, okay? And we've talked about this before, too. The sports media, you'll read in the papers, you'll read in the breakdowns, they'll reference all kinds of trends. They'll delve into stuff like Green Bay is 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games played on turf, or the last 7 games USC has played in the state of Oregon, the total has gone over 6 out of 7 times. It goes on and on and on and on about the trends that are absolutely meaningless. So I'm going to tell you this again. Okay, these trends, let's say Green Bay is or Miami is 0-11 in the month of December over the last 3 years, right? These trends are absolutely useless information. They mean absolutely nothing. A game from 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 3 years ago has zero impact on the outcome of that game on that particular day. Okay, so there's thousands of games played over the course of a year, right, over the course of time, and trends will develop. They just keep developing, right? And over time, some will stick out more than others. They absolutely mean nothing. If you're using these trends to pick your football games, you are making a massive, massive mistake. Okay, they mean absolutely nothing. I don't care if the Giants are 0-9 in Dallas on Sunday night. It doesn't mean they're going to be 0-10. It means absolutely nothing. It's just a trend that sticks out over time more than other ones, right? Trends will develop over time, and some will stick out more than others. They mean absolutely nothing. They're ridiculous. They're ludicrous. They're stupid. They don't mean a goddamn thing, okay? So The Miami. What about the Dolphins in December in 1978 or 79? They're 0-11 because they're a shit fucking team over the last 3 years. That's the only reason, okay? This is a new year. Forget trends. Forget every single trend that you ever read. They're meaningless and useless information. Eliminate that from your gambling or from your strategy of picking winners in football.
Well, speaking of useless and shitty, another big thing is to ignore these talking heads, especially, there's so much coverage, saturated every day. You've got college football live. You've got the NFL Network rolling 24/7, talking about these players, talking about these teams. And all they have to go on is stats that, some intern gathers. It's all just crap. It's all bullshit. But it definitely influences the market. And it's important to know, just because Bill Cowher's a great football coach, has won a couple Super Bowls, maybe he's a great father, a good man, the motherfucker doesn't know anything about gambling. He knows not, and that's all that matters. Let's not kid ourselves. The only reason the NFL is as big as it is because of fantasy, DraftKings, and of course gambling. And just because he's paid millions of dollars to sit on TV and talk about football doesn't mean he should be influencing your bets.
Yeah, I mean, he's giving you his opinion on what he knows about the game of football. And he sees that these guys have, this much talent. The other team has this much talent. Therefore, the team with this much talent is going to win. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, right? We've gone over this a million times in football, okay? It's all about value. Nobody can predict the outcome of football games. Nobody, right? There's too many in-game variances that happen. I mean, you watch a football game, okay? There's so many subjective calls. How many plays are there in a football game? How many offensive plays does each team run, Matt? Maybe 75 a game? Something like that. Let's say there's 150 plays a game, offensive plays a game. Honest to God, there is 150 subjective calls, out of 150. You have holding or not holding. You have roughing the passer or not roughing the passer. You have pass interference or not pass interference. There's so many subjective calls that affect the outcome of the game. And then you have the fumbles. Nobody can predict that, right? Nobody can predict this stuff over the course of 60 minutes. It's literally impossible. It's been proven to be literally impossible. I mean, the referees have a major impact on the outcome of games. We don't know how they're going to call it. We have no idea. Okay, so you have to stick to value. And what I mean by value is taking inflated prices or laying deflated prices. If you see a game where, Dallas, maybe they're 7-0 out of the gate, and they're playing a team that's 3-7, and the Cowboys are 11-point favorites in Week 9, doesn't mean they're going to cover, but what it does mean is that they're getting all this press, they're getting all this hype, they're getting all this stuff. They're going to be overinflated the next week. Okay? It's like when you see a team in a primetime game blow out another team, absolutely destroy another team and look flawless in doing so, the next week you're going to pay a hefty price to back that team. The number is inflated, so you should be looking at the underdog in that game or nothing. Doesn't mean they're going to cover. Doesn't mean anything. It just means you're playing the value and you're going with the best of it. And that's what I mean by talking about value. Now, not every game I'm going to be right on. Even when I'm playing value, I may have, assessed the game wrongly. I saw the value differently, but after I look at it, on Monday morning, I see maybe where I made a mistake. So I'm not going to be right every time in picking the value, but that's where your focus has to be. All this other stuff, the X's and O's, breaking down the games, it really means nothing. Look for the value, right? You're not going to be able to break down the X's and O's and come up with a winner. It's never been done in history by anybody, and I guarantee you're not going to be the first. There's too many in-game variances, too many intangibles, so many things can happen in a football game, so many things. I see guys make a fair catch on the 1-yard line. 3 plays later, they're punting from their own goal line, and the other team now has it at the great field position, and they kick a field goal, and they cover the line by a point, right? There's just so many things that can happen that you have no control over, that nobody can predict, And if you just stick with playing the value, look for where the value is from week to week. Look for overreactions, underreactions, especially in college football where, there's so many teams under the radar. It's not scrutinized. I mean, the top college teams are scrutinized, but there's so many college teams that are under the radar that you can get an edge up on. And same with the NFL. I mean, it's not as widespread in the NFL, but there's value every single week, and you try and find it, okay? So that's where your focus should be, not on trends, not on X's and O's, not on what you hear. You can listen all you want Sunday morning to these guys, like Tony Dungy and Shannon Sharp, if you can understand a word he says, or Bill Cowler, like Matt said, or Cower. All these guys, if you listen to a guy like Colin Cowherd, who's, his approach is really good. He's looking for value. He never breaks down X's and O's. But, you listen to these guys on Sunday morning or Saturday. They're ex-coaches. They're ex-players. They're absolutely clueless. They have to talk about something. They have to break it down. That's their job. It means nothing. What they say means absolutely nothing. And very rarely do you ever hear them picking a dog, because that's not how they were brought up. That's not how they were taught the game. They were taught that, the team with the best schemes, the team with the best offensive line, the team with the best defensive line, the team that can, win in the trenches, the team that can do all these things right is supposed to win, and that's who they pick, right? It doesn't matter. That doesn't happen. If it was that easy, we'd all be rich. At the end of the day, football is a game with so many luck-driven, unpredictable things that happen, and the referees having a major impact more than any other sport because there's so many subjective calls in the game. Okay, so just always keep that at the front of your mind, and you'll be better off.
Of course, you can find Brian and myself, Keith, everybody working hard, looking for value on the website every day, Sportswagers.ca. College this weekend, Brian. Football, NFL, of course, coming up as well. So busy. NHL training camps, let's not forget that. You've talked a lot today about sort of the pitfalls, the bad habits, the teasers, some of the trouble you can get in. What else is on your mind, man? Anything?
I think it's worth mentioning advanced statistics in football. We cover a lot of sabermetrics in baseball. Basketball has picked it up quite a bit too with the efficiency and tempo and stuff. Hockey has embraced it with
Corsi, all the good stuff.
Oh yeah, there's Corsi. They have the Corsi numbers in hockey. That's becoming a little more
high efficiency scoring chances, all that bullshit. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, football's starting to pick it up too. And I think that if you bet on football a lot, or any sport for that matter, you kind of owe it to yourself to familiarize yourself with the advanced statistics and understand what they mean. Okay, they can be used, really. They can really be used to increase your edge and to win you more money, okay? So a lot of the sports media, especially in football, hasn't fully embraced the advanced stats. There's really no reason to, because most of the audience doesn't really pay attention to it. But as a gambler, if you familiarize yourself with these advanced stats, I think you're going to give yourself an edge. So an advanced stat in football, may be right. Not every 2 or 3 yard gain is equal, Oh,
absolutely,
like
yeah.
3rd and 1, and the guy got 2 yards. Was it late in the game when the team was down 28-2? Like, what is the situation? Right? So there's a lot of really good advanced stats that are starting to come into play in football, and it's becoming more available. So it doesn't hurt to look into it and use that as well, okay? Because those advanced stats tell a story too. So keep that in your mind. If you're ahead of the curve, sure doesn't hurt. And keep those other things we talked about in mind too, okay? And you'll be better off. And we hope that you have a great year in football. We put our heart and soul into it, and we're going to continue to handicap the way we always do. And hopefully, if you don't agree with our pick, at least you may learn something in reading our write-ups, and you will advance yourself that way.
Well, those advanced stats, Brian, are going to be a big part of our handicapping this year, of course, in college and in the NFL. On the website, Sportswagers.ca. Give Brian a follow on Twitter, at SportsWagers3, the show at SportsWagersPod. You can find us, of course, on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Stitcher. We're sticking with SoundCloud, Brian. I had a look at it. it's not worth it to change. I think we're doing okay there, so we'll let that roll for another year. You can still find us, soundcloud.com/sportswagerspod. Of course, we'll tweet that out each and every Thursday. With that, Brian, anything else you'd like to add before we get out of here? I think you wrapped it up quite nicely, personally.
Thank you, Matt. Let's have a great football season, guys.
All right. For Brian Sherwood Steinberg, I'm Matthew Finney. Good luck and take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Sportswagers.ca podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe. For free daily picks, visit Sportswagers.ca.